have two jobs. So I work part-time at two different vets because I like the contrast in what they provide. One of my jobs is like a 24/7 hospital.
Yeah, that's important that you just mentioned that. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? So you will have days where you're tired and you're going to go in and you're going to train regardless, right?
Yeah, so I'm like tired every day, like the other week I did like something like over like 120 hours in like a 10-day period. And at the end of the day, like I always tell myself, and even before I got my pro card.
How did that affect your training? Like, was that something you had to be smart about? When, like, what time did you train? This would be
Hmm.
interesting for the listeners who might also be having to deal with
Yeah.
that right now. Let's talk about like your inspiration for women's bodybuilding. Obviously, you did the swimming, you wanted to go to the Olympics, you wanted to be an Olympian. Obviously, that's rooted in your desire to be a champion in some way, right? Is it five-time British champion?
Um,
MBW, your role within MBW, how did that happen? Was it like an invitation? Did you see like, oh, we got to bring Zena on board? Like she's too good with this competing stuff. Like, how did this happen?
Yeah, so obviously we kind of mentioned it briefly, but I've known AJ pretty much since I started bodybuilding back in 2020. Well, 2019 is when I started bodybuilding. 2020 is when I did my first prep. And I've known of AJ and we spoke since 2019 and obviously kind of like followed each other's journeys throughout that, through 2020 as well. And then I would say obviously MBW started like back in 2022 time, and I wasn't one of the initial athletes. From the moment he kind of launched MBW, I always supported the brand because I could see the vision of MBW and that vision completely aligned with what my vision for natural bodybuilding was. So since they launched, I kind of followed the brand. I invested in them. I bought their clothing. I was on their member site since like when it opened. Obviously then in 2023, spent a lot of time with like AJ and Loz as well at shows. I one of these people where I go to pretty much every show as well. So I would always see kind of them at the shows and things like that. And then kind of the back end of my 2023 prep, they kind of like followed the end of my prep. And yeah, after that, then last year, they invited me to join the team. And honestly, it was one of the biggest things that I think I've got so far in bodybuilding in terms of being invited into something that meant so much to me. But it wasn't forced. I didn't ever like follow, repost, share the brand with the idea of I'm doing this because I want to get on the team. It was that I love what they're doing. And I think AJ could see that. And it wasn't just kind of like me trying to work my way in almost. So
Yeah.
yeah, after last year, I started judging at shows. I went to all the shows. I went abroad to watch shows and things like that. And then, yeah, towards the back end of last year, they asked me to join, and yeah, meant a lot to me.
That's awesome. That's amazing. And I was just talking to AJ. For those of you, maybe you missed it. Maybe you missed it. Go back. That's the episode literally that we had just published. And I was talking about like the camaraderie is just unmatched right now with MBW. It
Mm,
just seems like that way. You got Ben Howard, of course, Keefe, you, Lowe's. I'm the
yeah,
list. There's a bunch now. It's growing, right? And
yeah.
you guys have like meetups. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so as of yet, like no like official meetups, but obviously we're always like all together at shows and things like that. I'm very close with like Loz and Ella, so like I've met up with them individually. We film videos together for the site, so every athlete basically films like one video a month for the member site, and
Hmm.
sometimes those end up being with other athletes as well. I know kind of AJ's vision is to do more where we're all together, but yeah, I mean obviously we'll all be at the MBW show. Some of us competing, some of us spectating, some of us helping out. But yeah, I think over the next kind of few years, it would definitely be nice to kind of like, I know I've listened to the episode with you and AJ, and he mentioned about kind of potentially doing seminars together abroad. And that is something that I'm super keen for. And I know everyone else would be as well. So yeah, it's definitely something that's growing. And, each year they kind of bring something new out the bag. So yeah, it'll be super cool in the future to do kind of things all together.
Amazing, amazing. And the MBW event, you're going to be there, right? You're not competing because you
Yes.
mentioned you're taking this year off season, but you'll be there just to, I'm assuming, like help out and just, yes, a spectator in a way, or
Kind of. So he hasn't mentioned it on when he had a chat with you, so I won't mention it yet. But I am involved in some way. I'm
okay.
not judging, but some people listening to this, I know they'll be like, "Oh, she's going to judge." I'm not judging, but I do have a little role which I'm super excited for. So yeah, I'm definitely going to be involved. I'm going to be present the whole day, and yeah, I'm absolutely buzzing for it. So it'll be good fun.
Okay, so that's wonderful. And let's dive back into this contest history, even goals, and then we'll also transition to some training stuff. That's always fun. But let's talk about the contest history a little bit more. So you got the technically 5 British titles, right? Technically.
Yeah.
And you did compete at DFAC Worlds? No, not yet.
No, so if we like 2020, obviously that was like it's pretty easy to summarize. I did PCA Open, which I won toned figure. I did the UKFBA International Open, which I won figure, and then I also did the NFM UK Open, which I won toned figure. Got my NFM, it's like a GBO pro card, and then I did the pro show and won that. So that was kind of my four in 2020. And then in 2023, I did the obviously BMBF qualifiers. I actually did women's bodybuilding and won that and did figure and that as well. And then I did both again in the finals, but took my pro card in figure. And then I did the UKFBA finals, which I actually placed third, which kind of then altered the rest of that season for me, which we can go into in a second if you want. But yeah, I also did PCA again, which I won the qualifier, but I decided not to do their finals.
Okay, and elaborate on that then.
Yeah, so basically my goal for 2023, I've spoken about it before, it's not kind of new knowledge, but I really wanted to win the UKFBA finals. I really wanted to go abroad with them. I really wanted to go kind of like Europeans, Natural Olympia, everything. And I'm sure we'll cover it on its own in a second, but also with work, being a vet, I had to plan that year meticulously to be able to allow myself the time, if I was to qualify, to be able to go away and do those shows. Because obviously, you don't know until the day if you're going to qualify. And I wouldn't have been able to get time off work last minute. So I actually took like quite an extended period of time off to be able to hopefully go to those shows. So my goal going into that season was to win. Obviously, I won it in 2020, but under different circumstances. So I really wanted to go and win. BMBF, I actually never expected to win and get my pro card there. I don't know why. I guess it's because I'd never competed with them before. I didn't really know how I'd fit with them. So I did that BMBF show first, got my DFAT pro card, which was obviously like such a shock. That day was a whirlwind of emotions because you have pre-judging and then you have finals. And after pre-judging, they moved us around so much to the point where I was like, there's no way, you know, I genuinely didn't expect it. And then got my DFAT pro card. And then obviously I did the UKFBA show and I ended up coming third. So then at that point then, my kind of options was I couldn't go any further with UKFBA. They didn't invite me to go abroad, so I couldn't do anything with them. The DFAC European show, they didn't have a pro figure. They only had like pro bodybuilding and things like that. So the only other option with DFAC at that point was to go to Australia to do Worlds, which, you know, for me, I didn't really want to do that at that point in time. Or my other option really was to do like a WMBF show. But I think at that point then, I knew what I needed to do better, so I decided to stop my season after that show, which wasn't when I planned on stopping. And yeah, since then I have got the kind of like, you know, they always say like no one works harder than the one that comes like second or third. So I have been putting everything into getting better.
Nice, nice. I did see in your stories you were a swimmer.
Yes, so I did competitive swimming pretty much from the age, literally, like I could swim and walk at the same time, but competitively from like 10 or 11 up until I was 17, actually. And yeah, that sport was my whole life pretty much. It was every single thing that meant the world to me. And yeah, I got to a pretty high level with that. And I actually ended up having a bit of a crossroads at 17. So I wanted to be a vet and I really wanted to go to uni, study veterinary, but I also really wanted to take swimming like all the way, like Olympics and things like that. But unfortunately, I kind of was very much in my head at the time where I wasn't one of those people that could just pass my exams without having to kind of put everything into them. So I had to make the decision. I actually ended up failing half of my exams while still trying to swim. So then the next year then I reset all my exams, stopped swimming, got into uni, and then I just felt like I'd left swimming in a good place and I didn't really want to go back and like try and kind of pick that back up. I wanted to focus on uni at that point.
Was that a hard transition though?
Yeah, it was genuinely like quitting swimming and also making the decision to like leave school and resit the year somewhere else. Those two decisions still to this day are like the biggest decisions I've ever had to make in my life. And you know, some people would think, oh, you know, it's not that deep, but swimming for me, like I imagined myself going the whole way. Like I imagined myself being an Olympian, and I also imagine myself obviously being a vet, and having to make that decision at 17, it's a big thing. And both of those decisions had to come together. The swimming one was I actually kept swimming when I made the decision to leave my school and go and resit my exams. So I basically did my first year of A levels. And then I didn't fail, quote unquote, but had very low grades that wouldn't have got me into vet school the year after. So I left all of my school friends after my teacher basically told me that I would never ever make it as a vet. I should pick something different. She said that I should just apply for something different in uni. So that day I actually picked up my bag and walked out of school. And then I went to a college and just said, like, can you take me to resit my exams and whatever? And they were like, we're full. But then I basically explained the situation to them and they let me in. And then I started with them for a few months and they actually brought it up and they just said, look, like, I'll be real with you, like swimming to that level and trying to get your grades to where they need to be, like it's going to be tough and like you should consider making a decision. And my dad as well at the time told me that you need to decide, like you just need to pick. So yeah, that's when I picked that. So both of those decisions at 17 was pretty hard.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds and looks like you're doing what you love now with not only as a vet, at least that's
Yeah.
what it seems like, right? And before we go into like the ultimate goal for Zena, like we're going to
Mm-hmm.
talk about that as well on the competitive side. Let's talk about like your inspiration for women's bodybuilding. Obviously, you did the swimming, you wanted to go to the Olympics, you wanted to be an Olympian. Obviously, that's rooted in your desire to be a champion in some way, right? But
Yeah.
why what was it that inspired the bodybuilding? And is there anybody in particular on the women's side that also inspired you?
Yeah, so I mean, for me, it was more of the statement of you can do more than one category. That was part of my
Mm,
decision making because before I did that, not many people kind of was brave enough to go figure in bodybuilding. And the BMBF provide like an awesome opportunity for anybody to cross over into women's bodybuilding to kind of almost keep women's bodybuilding alive. And Vicky, obviously is super passionate about women's bodybuilding and that passion kind of then spread. So
mm,
my kind of like decision to do it was I absolutely hate wearing heels, and I'm not afraid to say that. Like I don't enjoy wearing heels. I'm not a girly girl at all. And giving kind of like the opportunity to take my heels off and actually just kind of like show off more of my physique was so appealing to me. I love like bodybuilding poses. I love men's bodybuilding. So being able to do that and showcase that for me was like super special and given the opportunity, it was one that I couldn't really say kind of no to. Obviously, I didn't have like the level of muscle to be super competitive at that point. But yeah, it was really cool to do it and do the poses and just go and like try another category. And since then, like I've had so many messages of people saying, I'm inspired to do women's bodybuilding. And that was kind of the goal for me, was to kind of just put it back on the map and put also kind of like fuel Vicky's passion for it and try and spread it a little bit further. So yeah, it's definitely a category I loved in 2023. I can't say I would do it again because I do think my potential lies with figure. But yeah, it was super fun.
wonderful. And if we zoom out though, like let's zoom out for a second because we went very in the trenches there. But zoom out just in general, what got you inspired to do the bodybuilding? Like meaning you're going to the gym, you're training, and then
Yeah.
you want to compete, regardless of the category. So
Oh, like in
figure
general?
just in
In
general,
just
yeah.
bodybuilding as a whole. I thought you meant the category, but yeah, I
No,
mean,
no, but that both were good. Like it's good that we
yeah,
touch on both because that's important.
yeah. So for me, when I was back at set, kind of pulling it back to being like 17, me deciding to quit swimming, I did that year of my A levels, managed to get into vet school, went to vet school. And at that moment, then obviously I ticked off that goal because with vet school, once you're in, you're in. You can pass your exams. When the hardest thing is getting into vet
Mm,
school. So I'd almost ticked off that part. But then there was just such a part of me that felt that was missing. Like I couldn't ever explain it to anyone. And I think unless you've done like an elite sport, you can't explain what that feeling is. There was just a part of me that was missing. And when I went to uni, I tried every single uni sport. I tried swimming briefly for the uni team. I tried netball, I tried hockey, I tried rowing. Nothing just gave me that like same like passion or feeling that swimming did. So I ended up going to the gym. All of my friends would kind of like go and do uni things, and I would just go to a local gym. I met people there, got into lifting, got my personal training qualification paid for by uni to be able to kind of teach classes at uni. That then started to kind of like fuel my passion for the gym in general. And then I met my partner Ethan, who was already into bodybuilding at that point, and he kind of like exposed me to the sport. And I was the typical, when I first met him, I said I would never want to do bodybuilding, it's not me. But then the more you get exposed to it, the more I started almost training like a bodybuilder, living like a bodybuilder. And then before I knew it, I was in my first contest prep.
uh,
So for me, it was the only thing that filled the gap that swimming gave me. It gave me like a different sense of purpose, whereas nothing else did that for me. And so I'm so grateful for it for fulfilling that.
Amazing. Yeah, I'm sure many can relate to this. When I was speaking with AJ, so he was talking about how you work nights. I'm assuming it's not going to be forever. Like that's just
Yeah.
a window of like, okay, I'm gonna have to do this for the next little while based on maybe because you're relatively new to the to after graduating or
Yeah, no, not completely like for that reason. I have two jobs, so I work part-time at two different vets because I like the like contrast in what they provide. One of my jobs is like a 24/7 hospital, and then as part of the rota, you kind of take part in like running the night shifts and doing out of hours between
Mm.
the team yourself. I used to work at that place full time, so I used to do a lot more night shifts, a lot more weekends, but now I'm only part-time there. I only really do night shifts like to cover other people if they're sick or if the rota needs like a gap filling and things like that. So I probably average like one or two a month now, which is, yeah, it's pretty easy. It's not too bad. But yeah, I was definitely doing more beforehand. And yeah, to be honest, like again, same with anything, it's like a lot of people will be like, oh, like I couldn't do that, but if you had to, you would, and it's just
Yeah.
managing, the best that you can. And I don't really change anything. I'm lucky enough that I can usually get a little bit of sleep on them, and then just try and go back to normal the next day, really.
Right, right. So the night shifts were basically the hospital because you were working in a
Yeah,
hospital. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Okay, that's understandable.
yeah,
And now you're not barely doing it, like what you said, like twice a month, right? But when you were,
yeah.
how did that affect your training? Like, was that something you had to be smart about? Like, what time did you train? This would be
Hmm.
interesting for the listeners who might also be having to deal with
Yeah.
that right now.
Yeah, so our night shifts run from 5 p.m. until 8 a.m. the next day. And sometimes I would like try and plan my training so that I would train on the day of the night shift. So I would train in the morning. So I would train at about kind of 10 a.m. or something like that, do my session, come home, eat. I would try and get a nap in before starting work at 5 p.m. Then ideally the next day when I finished at 8 would be a rest day. If it wasn't a rest day, then depending on if I got any sleep or not, I would either kind of go home, eat my pre-workout and go straight to the gym after the shift, or go home, nap, and then go straight to after the gym. But my like biggest tip is always train after you've slept, if that makes sense. So whether or not you can manage to sleep on the night shift and you train in the morning, or whether you get a nap and then you train, you want to be fueled and you want to have as much sleep as you can before you train. And that is going to look different for everyone. And not everyone is going to be able to change their training around. And now when I do them, I don't change anything. I just do the session on the day it falls. My job is never going to be ideal for bodybuilding. I have to do my sessions at 6 a.m. I have to do my sessions after a 60-hour week. And if I consistently waited for the perfect time to train, I would never train.
Yeah, that's important that you just mentioned that. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? So you will have days where you're tired and you're going to go in and you're going to train regardless, right?
Yeah, so I'm like tired every day. Like the other week I did like something like over like 120 hours in like a 10-day period. And at the end of the day, like I always tell myself, and even before I got my pro card, in my head, it would be like, what would a professional do? What would a professional athlete, how would they conduct themselves? And that's showing up no matter what. And, I get up, I don't want to wake up when my alarm goes off. I'd love to press snooze, but I would never do that because at the end of the day, my competitor would. You don't ever want to be outworked, and whether or not that's you going tired, it's whether or not you're going hungry, it's whether or not you just have to do what you can and do your best at every single moment. And that looks different. My logbook probably doesn't look as consistent as bodybuilders that train the same every day. I have to deal with regressions some week. That's just inevitable, but showing up is what matters.